Welcome to Toronto, where the Rush are rolling once again. The defending AUDL champions still have never been beaten. Now 27-0 and another perfect season in sight. The Rush are ready for their toughest test yet. The hungry New York Empire invade Varsity Stadium for a Saturday night showcase, and the opening pull just moments away. Hi again, everybody. Evan Lepler alongside Chicago Nemesis standout Megan Tormey. Delighted to have you with us on this glorious day in Toronto in the great Canadian province of Ontario. Megan, we've got the defending champs, the undefeated, the Toronto Rush. They are the standard in this league, and this is their toughest game remaining in the season. Their only game left against a team with a winning record, and this is New York's chance to prove that they're among the elite.
That's right, Evan. In week one, we saw the New York Empire nearly beat the Toronto Rush. They're the self-proclaimed faceless mob, and they are just that, a group of individuals stronger and more fierce when they're working together. And
if you believe in the ethos that the more desperate team usually wins, Toronto pretty much has the top spot locked up, considering who the Rush still have left to play. This New York team, coming off their first loss in more than 2 months last week in D.C., falling to the Breeze by 5. This is a really important game for New York to prove that they can beat this Toronto team and stay hang close with them.
And they've done a lot of work this week to prepare for this game. They spent practice talking about the offenses they know the Toronto Rush are going to play and what they can do defensively to counter that.
They also got back to having fun, which is one of the things they said we really needed to do after a frustrating weekend in D.C. As we look at this New York team, the biggest news of the day is they are without their top handler. Noah Saul is not here in Toronto. He will not play. But you mentioned the faceless mob. Let's meet some of those faces, those jerseys in white. Who should we be looking out for in the Empire?
We chose to talk about Ryan Drost because he is the defensive leader for his team with 22 Ds, but it is important to mention that the second most defensively valuable player on the team is his twin brother Mike, who has 19 Ds under his belt. Ryan is having an impactful rookie year with the Empire. His athletic background includes track and soccer, which is why he's so intelligent field sense-wise and helps him with his speed and agility. Matt Stevens, moving on, has caught a whopping 37 goals for his team. He's not the team's most well-rounded player, but has been offensively instrumental by consistently positioning himself well on the field. Matt's foresight on offense allows him to be near or in the end zone at the right time, which is why he's the favorite target for so many of the Empire players. And then Matt Bode, he is one of the individuals who has moved up to New York to play on the Empire this year. He's only 23 years old, but has quite a few years of competitive ultimate under his belt. He's the best downfielder the Empire has, and if you look at the number of goals and assists that he has, you can see why, as a cutter, he's so valuable. He can catch the disc in the end zone, but if he's not there, he is able to finish that play.
Matt Bode, a guy with some international experience on the U23 team that competed against a lot of these young guys who played for the Toronto Rush. So many great players. It's a team of all-stars. Who should we be looking out for at the outset?
Mark Lloyd still is the best of the best. Looking briefly at his stats, you can see how he is so versatile. He's got 27 goals under his belt, 32 assists, and 16 Ds. That asterisk, of course, indicating that he is the team leader in Ds. Watching him play, it won't take long before we see a highlight reel-worthy play come from him. He's quick, athletic, and always has a great read on the disc. He's a tough defender, and part of the reason he has so many Ds is because he's great at those heads-up Ds. He'll lay out into the lane or chase after every huck that the team puts up.
There's Cam Harris hopping right next to him. Equally athletic and as much of a difference maker.
You're absolutely right. He's just as well-rounded as Mark Lloyd. He's 6'2", yet still very quick and agile. And if you watch him, he's got great reaction time, which makes him more of a defensive monster than just about anyone else on the Toronto Rush. When you're that tall and you can react as quickly as he can, you can bet he's going to get just about any disc thrown to his man. And then lastly, we'll talk about Stephen Armitage. He has 29 goals to boast. He is also agile, but his agile footwork and background in track and field gives him the speed advantage that few defenders are able to handle, which is why often when he's catching goals in the end zone, his defender is quite a ways away from him.
Armitage never stops running. He's one of the more underrated guys in this league to watch. We're underway. The Rush in red. These are their alternate jerseys that they got after winning the championship last year. They didn't get rings, but they got new jerseys, and these jerseys remind them of last year's success. But a new season has brought similar success for the team here in Toronto. Mark Lloyd, the GM of this team, has his first touch, and he dumps it back to one of the primary handlers, Thompson McKnight. Jeff Lindquist, a key guy who did not play when these two teams met the first time around. It's interesting. This is the second meeting between New York and Toronto this year. They met more than 2 months ago, and the game started with a similarly successful offensive point for the Rush. It's 1-0. In that game back in April, New York scored 4 of the first 5 and had a lead by 3 in the fourth quarter, only to see Toronto rally for the win. That was the second day of a back-to-back after Toronto almost lost to D.C. the day before. First score of the day belongs to their leading scorer, Steve Armitage, 31-year-old who ran track at Western Ontario. Megan, both coaches said that they had some new wrinkles to show to the other team today. What do you expect to see?
From the New York Empire, I expect to see some new defensive looks. They are known for their defense, and that's what they wanted to be known for when they stepped onto the field this year. So I think we're going to see just a few different looks to combat the flexible Toronto offense.
Well, it's Billy Katz and Lionel Wininger, the two handlers who have touched the disc so far. Again, Noah Saul, who leads New York with 45 assists on the season. He's not here today. Here's the thing. He missed the previous game against Toronto as well. So New York was very competitive with the Rush without him. And in fact, New York's Justin Allen was not part of the squad yet, still in college mode when these two teams met back in April. So Allen getting his first taste of Toronto. So far, the Rush defense has forced New York to go backwards. Cutting downfield, Wininger bluffs the deep shot. You know, from a size and strength standpoint, this Toronto team is just bigger. New York knows it can't get into a game of deep balls. Need to pick the spots. Here's the first try, and Toronto's up to the task. And then some. Vasiliev fouled on the mark, and he will gain 10 yards. It was Mike Jones who had the first D of the day, intercepting the pass intended for Taylor Brooks. The Rush looking to improve to 28-0 all time. They're 9-0 this year. Here's the guy they call Bomber, Jeff Powell, dumps it back for Jones. And a crossfield cut. Powell sends it forward. Ricky Zito over to Vasiliev. Born in Russia, Vasiliev gets it to Jones. Avoids the poaching defender, Matt Bode, and they hammer over the top. It's a break for the Rush. They lead 2-0.
Watching that point, it's no wonder that the Toronto Rush are undefeated to this point, of course. Great heads up, downfield D. But watching them move the disc offensively, when a D team can work so well together, flow so smoothly, that's a very hard team to beat.
Mike Jones had the D, and then the hammer over the top. You wonder whether New York has the offensive firepower to come back from a 4-score deficit. And thinking that that would be a mighty steep mountain to climb, this is almost a must-score point here for New York. Joe Santosis ahead downfield for Mrs. Billy Katz. Up line, Taylor Brooks. Pressure defensively. Cam Harris was on the mark, trying to get the break. Katz missed it on his first try. The second bid comes up with possession, and he breaks his mark to give New York its first score.
Talking with Seth Canetti before this game started, I asked him who's going to step up and take the place of Noah Saul, who has thrown just so many goals for the New York Empire. And he said if Billy Katz has a good game, the New York Empire stands a good chance to win this game.
Katz hits Sam Taylor in the end zone. Billy Katz, just 23 years old, play at NYU. New York, coached by Tom Gibbons, took over middle of the season last year. Toronto, meanwhile, coached by Evan Phillips. They know him as Dime, and Scott Shooter Hasty. It's Vasiliev and Jarrett Marin playing catch in the end zone for Toronto in this junky 3-3-1 look. Toronto finds space in a big backhand huck to the end zone. Toronto connects. Jonathan Martin right on the spot. So if you're New York and you throw that junky defensive look and Toronto breaks it this easily, do you go back to it?
Evan, I think it's always important to give whatever defense you throw on the field at least one more shot before you take it out of the playbook for that game. So although the Toronto Rush got a great long throw off of that play, it's still worth trying it again. You can't give up so quickly. You have to give it one more look before you say they can beat this defense too easily.
Mark Lloyd averaging about 6 seconds of airtime per pull. Isaiah Massick-Kelly with the assist. Sort of a 50-50 shot. You saw in the replay he clapped his hands, was thrilled that Martin came down with it. Toronto still with no turnovers, 4 points in. Underneath, Brooks. Played college ultimate down at Virginia, small school, Radford University. Not known as an ultimate power. This backhand floats too much, and Lloyd comes up with another D. Mark Lloyd gets his 17th D of the season. And wide open in the end zone, Toronto converts again. Cameron Harris, the recipient, perhaps his easiest score of the season.
And New York is looking just a little bit slow to react when the disc changes hands. You're right, Cam Harris was all alone, not only because he's a fast player, but I don't think New York had matched up on him just yet.
Open by 30 yards in the end zone. Only question was, would he have enough room near the back of the end zone, and he had plenty. And there's the D from Lloyd. On this team of superstars, you said it, he stands out. And he stands out for numerous reasons, both on and off the field. He basically assembled this team. Last Sunday, it was Father's Day, and Mark tweeted, "Happy Father's Day to the man who bought me an Ultimate League." Bought an Ultimate League so I could start playing. Bought an Ultimate Team, really. Vasiliev was poaching the deep shot, but Justin Allen outruns him and hauls it in. Vasiliev misread it, and Allen will try to get his troops fired up.
Hoping we can get another look at that goal. Kind of hard to tell why Vasiliev stopped running. It's possibly was blinded by the sun, couldn't find the disc. Or maybe he didn't realize that the disc was not going out of bounds.
Justin Allen had an amazing season collegiately from a school that hasn't been known as an ultimate power at Appalachian State. Justin Allen finished 3rd in the Callahan voting for the Men's Player of the Year, and there's a big flick pull. The official tweet that Mark Lloyd sent out on Father's Day, he wrote, "Happy Father's Day to a man who showed his support of me by buying a Frisbee team." And his father actually replied on Twitter, said, "Thanks, but that would be 2 teams, actually." And here's a turnover. Picking up for New York, Isaiah Bryant. And the Empire have broken Toronto for the first time.
Ryan Drost with a great inside output into the end zone there.
So Toronto bolts out to the 4-1 lead. New York gets 2 of them back. Sort of a careless throw that got D'd up by Sean Childers. And it's Drost who picks up the assist for the Empire. Allen will stay out on the field. Here's a guy who was born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. He started playing Ultimate late in high school and has gradually become one of the top players in the country. It's sort of an unorthodox route. He's played for Ring of Fire. He made Appalachian State into a contender. He plays with a lot of confidence. There's Allen on the mark. Now Matthew Lamar marking Vasiliev. Jones, little push pass back for Anatoly. Nice low release flick. Toronto has just remarkable patience with the disc.
I think Toronto has a lot of patience, period, and they exhibited that very well in week 1 where they played the closest games we've ever seen them play. Remaining that calm internally and on the field is what won them those games.
This was a pick call that cost Toronto some yardage. Back in the hands of Jones. He couldn't hit Vasiliev and turns it over. So New York with a chance to tie it here, looking for its 3rd straight. Allen, the first cut underneath. Dumps it off for Bryant. Past the midway point of the first quarter, we've had a pretty good scoring pace so far. Timeout, Empire. 5:25 to go in the first. The Empire came out of the gate sluggishly, but all of a sudden New York knocking on the door of a tie score here in Toronto. We're back to Varsity Stadium in a moment.
I missed my graduation. I sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed the final exam. I missed the playing play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
Oh, look at the Toronto Rush defense discussing how they can regain possession after a careless giveaway. This Toronto team 27-0, 9-0 this year. Their average margin of victory 9.6. But if you take out that first weekend when they played a 1-point game at DC and a 2-point game in New York, Toronto's won by nearly 12 points per game over the last 7. And this is a team that will close the season with 4 games against the 3 bottom teams in the division. This is the final really marquee game on the schedule for Toronto. Of course, we'll be back here in Toronto 5 weeks from now for AUDL Championship Weekend 3. And not what New York was looking for out of that timeout. Easily defended by the Rush. Vasiliev swings the field. This is Remy Ojo. He's a walking highlight reel defensively. And Toronto gives it right back. Backhand shot unsuccessful for Jonathan Martin. Well, certainly nicer weather than when we were here in Toronto last time when the Rush hosted the Dragons back in early May. It was an overcast, cloudy day. It really feels like summer. Receiver travel was called on Matt Bode. And he's going to have to retreat into the depths of his end. He'll have to retreat into the depths of his end zone. He'll still keep the disc. If it was a thrower travel, it would be a turnover. Of course, everybody's still adjusting to referees. Your officials today in the zebra suits, Jeff Peters, the head ref, with Bill Boyer, Linda Kudo, and Jared Stewart. Rich Haight is the ref on the clock. Contact foul called on Vasiliev. Like any other sport, if the referees are consistent, they just need to set the tone early. Brooks and Santosis playing catch. Ojo with good dump defense on Katz. Now Katz looking up line and Ojo right in his pocket. And an injury timeout downfield. And it looks like it's Matt Bode who's walking off the field holding his right arm. So certainly concerning news for Empire fans is Matt Bode, who grew up playing with the Saul brothers. They went to the same high school in Pennsylvania. And Matt Bode started playing elite club down in North Carolina, part of the Ringer Fire team that went to the semis at Nationals in 2012. Well, this 8th point of the first quarter has been the longest one yet by far. "26-year-old Gord Harrison picks it up. Joe Santosis marking. Stall count rising. Harrison throws up a 50-50. And New York rises up for the D. Matt Stevens made the play in the air and got drilled as he came down. Perhaps another timeout was called. Not signaled clearly, but it looks like we're going to take the timeout. The second one of this point here in the first quarter of action. The Rush still leading 4-3.
Yeah, it's a Zipcar. I don't own it. I just use it when I need it. Zipcar has thousands of cars parked all over the city, even 2 on my block. You can use one for an hour or for a day. And Zipcar pays for gas and insurance. It's easy.
Go to Zipcar.com to get your Zipcard, the key to vehicles parked in your neighborhood and across the globe. For work or play, find a Zipcar near you, book it,
And before you know it, you're on the road.
cars by the hour or day, gas and insurance included. Join for as little as $6 per month at Zipcar.com.
A sunny Saturday night at Varsity Stadium. The Rush lead 4-3. And the referees ruled that the sideline signaled for the timeout, which the coaches can do before the release of the throw from Harrison. So it was not a turnover, and Toronto retains the disc. An astute coaching move, but we certainly did not see or hear any signal of a timeout until long after it appeared Stevens made the D for New York. And the stall count resets to Cam Harris. Adrian Yearwood with a touch. And here's Lloyd. recognizable by his number 89. Eamon Pinto missed some time earlier this year. He's back healthy. Lloyd underneath. Entering the day, Lloyd and Harris led the team with 32 assists each, and a rare drop from Cameron Harris, perhaps thinking about that next throw before he secured the possession.
Actually, a couple of uncharacteristic turnovers from the Toronto Rush, very fortuitous for the New York Empire. Theirs is definitely an offense that needs a few opportunities to convert.
Here's Justin Allen, guarded by Pinto, reverses it across field. Well, we want to know what you think. Today's Twitter question, who's the favorite to win the AUDL championship? I imagine there may be some regional bias as we take the poll from around all the different parts of North America, but let us know on Twitter, at Evan Lepler, at Meagles000, with the hashtag AUDL champs. Now, Mark Lloyd told me before the season started, he was excited. Oh, what a D, or what a score from New York. Great job reading the disc in the end zone. And New York ties it up after a marathon 8th point in that first quarter.
Number 19, Ben Ivers, with the goal there. He is a 24-year-old, someone very invested in his own personal health. As a high schooler, he broke his back and has spent a good number of years strengthening himself. So maintaining good personal strength is of the utmost importance to him for that obvious reason.
He's back healthy now, helping to carry New York into a tie score. Before the season, the Rush, coming off an undefeated year, knew that they might not be the favorites. And that was something that Mark Lloyd liked. He said all the conversation was about the teams out west, San Jose and San Francisco, the additions that the New York Empire made and that the DC Breeze made. And all the while, Toronto with a very similar roster to the team that was one of the top seeds at Club Nationals, referred to as GOAT, and similar roster they had last year, produced an undefeated season. That is a gorgeous throw from Toronto into the hands of Steve Armitage again.
Izzy Bryant, clearly very quick. He's one of the few people who can keep up with Stephen Armitage.
Regardless of the defense, the throw from Jonathan Martin, just too good here. Perfectly located. Armitage is not a guy who's been part of the ultimate institution here in Toronto forever, like so many of these other guys. He was basically a runner, ran track, tried out, and just was running away from established players on the field. And at that point, they know, we got something here. He may be a little raw, but we're going to polish this guy into a diamond, and he has been a great gem for Toronto. 1 minute to go here in the first from Varsity Stadium, home of the University of Toronto Varsity Blues. New York takes a deep shot, looking for Bode in the end zone, and Matt Bode hauls it in. New York evens at 5-5. Ricky Zito trailing the play defensively for the Rush.
Great put. That was a little tricky to read. Basically went over Bode's head. But as we said earlier, he's an incredibly seasoned athlete, even though he's only 23 years old.
Not a bad throw from Lionel Wininger. Got to be cool for Wininger. Growing up in Brooklyn and getting to play professional ultimate in Brooklyn, right on Coney Island at MCU Park, home of the Brooklyn Cyclones, a New York Penn League club. Enjoyed talking a little baseball with New York coach Tom Gibbons before the game. He comes from a baseball background. He played baseball at the Division III level at Amherst College. Amherst College has produced numerous general managers. Boston Red Sox general manager Ben Cherington, Dan Duquette, currently the GM of the Baltimore Orioles, also an Amherst College alum. And Ben Cherington was a sophomore at Amherst College when Tom Gibbons visited as a pre-frosh, and Tom said Ben Cherington was one of the reasons I went to Amherst College over some other schools. Toronto efficient and effective offensively again. This time it's Masick Kelly to Cameron Harris, and the quick answer with 25 seconds to go in the first. They make it look pretty easy, don't they?
Great offensive setup. They do. I think they do better than any other team. A great job at using the entire width of the AUDL field to their advantage. That's hard to defend, of course, but that also helps them move the disc as quickly as they do.
Well, it's the Empire going against the rush and the clock right here. Disc starts on that first catch and throw. Wininger finds space to Katz. 15 seconds. Looking up line for Katz. Does he have the wheels? Oh, you bet he does. And we're tied 6-6. And now Toronto will have 9 seconds remaining for a quick counter, perhaps. This is a pretty good handler cut from the set. Just taking off, and he left his defender, Mike Jones, in the dust.
Sometimes I think that's a particularly clever thing to do offensively. No one really expects the handlers, the main handlers, to cut down the field, either up the line or for the score. Sometimes you can pull that one out for a quick, sneaky goal.
There's certainly times if you're the handler and you're the automatic dump reset, and then all of a sudden you're not there anymore, that can flummox a team. But if you have the space to make that cut and you're not blocking somebody else off, why not? See how New York defends this. Toronto has less than 10. Justin Allen isn't even going to mark somebody. He's playing free safety. Toronto swings it downfield, and the deep shot put up from Thompson McKnight. Near the end zone, it's deflected and falls incomplete. And this quarter could not have ended any better for the New York Empire. The visitors from the U.S. traveled to Rochester last night, traveled to Toronto today. They told the customs agent that we're a professional sports team coming to play Toronto. And after falling behind 4-1, the Empire closes the first quarter on a 5-2 run of their own to even things up after 12 minutes. Toronto looking for a deflection here, which is legal as time expires, but it was not to be. The fans enjoying the conditions, and we've got a good game. 1 down, 3 to go here in Ontario. 6-6 your score. More of the AUDL on ESPN3 in just a moment.
I missed my graduation, practice, asleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed the final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
Well, still a ways away from the sun setting here on one of the longest days of the year, on the verge of the summer solstice. North of the border, we are in Toronto, Ontario, home of the defending champs, and it's a 6-6 score after one. Evan Lepler with Megan Tormey. And Megan, we jump into these first quarter highlights. All rush at the beginning, and it looked like this was going to be a Toronto coronation as they're on their way to perhaps their second straight undefeated season. What turned it around in your mind? What did New York do to start forcing some turnovers?
I think New York settled in a little bit more offensively. We know from Seth Canetti, the captain of the Empire, how important it was for the Empire to have fun, to stay calm, and it took just a couple of points for them to fall into the flow.
Here we go, second quarter underway. New York receiving, and the deep shot was thwarted. Allen nearly made a superhuman play. He is human, however. Perhaps. Lindquist to Ojo. Pick call downfield on Toronto. Ojo will pace the yardage back. Ojo in his mid-20s. Over to Vasiliev. Big backhand. That one doesn't have enough air. Looking deep for Lindquist. Toronto has uncharacteristically given New York the disc a bunch of times as well in these last 6-7 minutes of action.
Which, of course, is very important for New York.
And the whistle goes against Ojo, who laid out big time. I think was called for the strip.
They talked before the game about how they were going to play a little more boring offense than they do typically. Short throws, not looking to waste any opportunity that the Rush give them. And the Rush has given them just a few more opportunities than they typically do so far this game.
Another big layout underneath. Jarrett Marin lets New York know of his presence. And now Marin beat up line, but the pass too far ahead of Wininger. Still plenty of room. The blue is not the back of the end zone. Here's Lindquist looking deep. A lot of float under this one. Ojo getting ready to climb. Ojo not in just yet. Double team near the goal line and gets it over to Marin for the Toronto score. That is a break to begin the quarter. And a 2-minute and 16-second point. We've had some long ones. That's the length of point I think New York would prefer. They'd rather keep this game in the mid-teens. Toronto certainly capable of scoring mid-20s.
When you get the Toronto Rush to take a little more time at each point, it obviously means that you're doing something correct defensively. The Toronto Rush does a great job very quickly on pull plays and moving the disc, hitting their intended targets. When you can mess that up, you can give yourself an opportunity to score. It's a 2-game weekend for both of these teams. New York plays at Rochester tomorrow. Meanwhile, Toronto will be hosting Philadelphia here at Varsity Stadium tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Go to the top of the East Division. It's a 3-team horse race. Toronto has no losses. New York and DC each have 2. New York going about 2 months in between setbacks, falling to Toronto in early April, and then falling last weekend to DC. Big layout to keep that disc alive. Brandon Auerbach. Deep shot high in the air. Joe Babino could not come down with it. But there may have been a foul, and there was. Babino was wearing Jeff Powell on his back trying to make that catch. He did a great job of sticking with it.
Perhaps delay of game. Babino may have taken too much time. So he resets. Dumps it back for Auerbach. Flick to the end zone. Nice put. Right on the mark. Sam Taylor for the New York score, and we're even at 7.
Sam Taylor started playing pickup when he was a mere 9 years old. There are a lot of players on the New York Empire who started playing in college. In fact, I'd say most individuals started playing in college. When you think about the number of people who started playing in their elementary school days on the Toronto Rush, it's astounding the number of years of experience the Toronto Rush have. But there are a few standout players like Taylor who have been playing for much, much longer.
It always frustrates me when I hear of a guy who started playing at 9 years old, because my thought is, I wish I knew about Ultimate at 9 years old.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed until I went to college.
And that's the key of the AUDL, and really the key for all Ultimate right now, expanding our exposure into the youth scene. And it has been an explosion, and we've talked about this before, but when somebody gets exposed to Ultimate, they're pretty always amazed by this incredible sport. We don't want it to be such a secret. Let's spread the news. Near the sideline. Oh, nice job by McKnight. Quick release after he kept his foot in bounds, and the throw was perfect. What a sequence from Thompson McKnight.
Some of the throws that downfield players have on the rush are as good as the top handlers on other teams.
Right into the hands of Masick Kelly.
Speaking of getting competitive experience early, Thompson McKnight started playing for GOAT when he was 20. Masick Kelly was 18 years old.
Masick Kelly, a part of the U23 Canadian team that played Team USA in the gold medal game, going against, among others, Justin Allen. Allen and Masick Kelly matched up a lot in that classic gold medal game here in Toronto. The USA emerged on top. So many of the top Ultimate players in the AUDL and around the country are getting ready to head to Worlds in Italy in August. Oh, the flick attempt up the sideline. Canceled out immediately by the Toronto hand block. Gord Harrison got in the way. Vasiliev with a nice upline cut. He chopped his steps well and now floats this one, seeking Harrison. With one hand, Harrison could not catch it, and Bode landed on top of him. Good to see Harrison pop up, as Bode absolutely sandwiched him into the turf. Well, it's funny. You think about the question today. Who's your favorite to win the championship? Let's see. Who won it last year? Toronto. Have they taken a step backward? No. So you'd think most people would say Toronto, but obviously we wouldn't be asking the question if it was so obvious. We've already had a bunch of responses for Madison, a bunch of responses for San Jose, and some mentioning DC as the dark horse. Jeff Powell made contact with Sam Taylor, and no whistle arrived. Now another deep shot. This is Lindquist all alone, shy of the goal line. Back for Harrison, and into the end zone for Martin, and the Toronto score.
Play between both teams getting a little bit physical. The Empire expected that going into this game. But when you're in the thick of it, when you're on the field, it certainly can make it difficult to keep your head on your shoulders.
So this a break to put Toronto back up by 2. The Rush have not trailed yet in this game, scored the first point, took a 4-1 lead We were tied 6-6 at the end of one, but Toronto with 3 out of the first 4 here in the second quarter. As we near the midway point, 4 12-minute quarters here in the AUDL. If we were tied at the end of regulation, we would have a 5-minute overtime period. If it's tied after that 5-minute overtime, it becomes sudden death. Or as many people don't like to say, double universe point. Wininger with a big backhand. New York gives chase. Ryan Drost could not haul it in. Ryan, a rookie in the AUDL, his twin brother Matt, who's about an hour and a half older than than Ryan. Mike Drost, an hour and a half older than Ryan. Mike played last year. Ryan attended some Empire games, and well, he's been a pretty nice pickup. He leads them in Ds.
That's right. Ryan was nursing a shoulder injury. He had surgery on it. He had separated it a couple of times, and had so much fun watching his brother play that when he healed up, he tried out.
They're very, very similar, as you would expect. The only difference is the hair. Ryan's a little shaggier. That's how their teammates tell him apart. So Ryan is not allowed to get a haircut during the season. Eamon Pinto finds Mark Lloyd. Lloyd bursting forward to the end zone. Nice job by New York communicating with a poach to prevent Lloyd from having the easy up line. Back across the field, in and out of the hands of the Rush. Cats making contact, but no whistle. It was a bullet flick that Andrew Watts could not collect. Joe Babino streaking deep. The throw did not have enough to get him to the end zone. And a turnover right on the edge of the goal line. Babino looked to the ref, tapped his wrist. Now looking the other way. Cameron Harris alone by 25 yards. Puts it to space. Perfectly done. Toronto has scored 3 in a row.
Points like those where the entire team sprints the length of the field in such a short time are so exhausting. But it really is a testament to the staying power of the Toronto when they secure points like those.
Well, New York on the verge of bringing it back within 1, just gives it away. And transition defense hasn't been particularly good on either side so far. Harrison with a pull. And this would be the spot where Noah Saul would almost always have the disc in his hands. Former North Carolina dark side player. Not here to attend a wedding. A lot of float on this one. And Toronto's Jeff Lindquist got a hand on that disc first in the end zone. It's funny, when we first learned that Noah Saul wasn't going to be here, we thought that's a really crippling thing for New York's chances. But then you think back to April when it was 22-20, Toronto won a very tight game. Did New York have Noah Saul? No. Did New York have Justin Allen? No. Toronto was missing some guys too. But Allen's here today for the Empire. The Rush, such a heavyweight fighter. And New York was able to withstood that first big blow in the first quarter. But now a huge haymaker from the Rush here in the second to make it a 4-score game. Ojo in the end zone.
If the Empire are an an excellent team, and as we talked about earlier, them going under the name the Faceless Mob, they really do work incredibly well together. They need just a few leaders to set tones offensively, defensively, but despite that, they are a committed team.
Lindquist to Ojo. Tom Gibbons will try to remind him of the teamwork necessary, as Gibbons has seen enough. He's taken another timeout. We'll take it to the Rush. Have opened up a 4-score lead, 11-7, 3:15 to go. Second quarter here in Toronto.
I missed my graduation, distracted. Asleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed the final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
Great to be with you as always. Evan Lepler. Feels great to be reunited with Megan Tormey. We've been on the West Coast for a while. It's nice to see you again.
It's nice to see you in person, Evan. Of course, I followed all the action on ESPN3 while you and Chuck were calling some huge and exciting games.
Yeah, Chuck's getting a little out of control, but we'll rein him in before we have him here in Toronto for the championship weekend. We'll be back here in Canada next week. We'll visit Percival Molson Stadium once again. The Montreal Royale will host the DC Breeze in a game with all sorts of implications. You know, obviously DC grappling for that second position in the East Division, and I really believe that's going to be a very important game for Montreal as well. The Royale have had so many close calls, and they're certainly the best of that bottom, few teams in the division. But, can they prove to be among that top four? We'll find out next week in Montreal, Quebec.
But they certainly have set themselves up incredibly well for the future. If Montreal is not a contender this year, I think everyone knows you need to watch out for them next year and the years to follow.
They certainly had the best crowd I've seen in person in the AUDL. That game back in April against the Rush was an absolutely unbelievable atmosphere.
I'm very excited to go back to their home stadium next week.
New York trying to squelch this Toronto run out of the timeout. Into space, Taylor Brooks has time before the stall count sets, flicks it to space, and that's a beautiful crossfield flick to Matt Stevens. And New York trying to use this as a boomerang to swing the momentum the other way.
Matt Stevens, though, the gentleman who just pulled in the score, such an interesting character. I found out that he learned about the AUDL and the New York Empire on the Thursday before tryouts. He was playing indoor. He's only ever played in a casual recreational setting. Found out about this professional team and was so intrigued he went, tried out, and made the team. And has been a huge entity for them this year. Yeah. He's a very humble guy when talking about it. He credits his teammate for helping groom him to be the scoring machine that he is. But when you watch him, he does such an excellent job of setting up his cut several throws before the throw that comes to him. So he does have a lot of field sense. He does have a lot of foresight. Doing quite well on the Empire during his rookie year. Amazing
second-level cutting as such a young, inexperienced player. Stevens among the top 10 goal scorers in the league. Enter the day with 31. He's got a couple today. Toronto turns it over. Allen flicks it forward. And this is Ryan Drost. These two guys have become such a tandem defensively. Allen, a guy who can really do it all. Drost, a guy whose throws have really come along. Considers himself more of an athlete. Contact downfield. Toronto will center the disc on the goal line for a chance to make it a two-score game as we tick under a minute and 3/4 left in this first half. Childers picks up the assist, somehow chiseling that throw into the end zone.
Yeah, that was quite a tight squeeze. But Izzy Bryant was heads up and aware.
So it's interesting. New York certainly proving something. You know, a lot of teams with the way Toronto's played for stretches would be down 6-7 scores. New York's been able to hang around here. And in these last 91 seconds of the first half, that is pivotal. You can't let Toronto go on a 3-0 run here to end the half. You got to at least hold your serve.
Ben Iver's wife, Erin, has done a great job writing recaps of all of the home games, and she mentioned that the Empire have the tendency to lull in the second or third quarter. We certainly haven't seen that lull this quarter. If they maintain the strength they're playing with now during the third quarter, it'll be quite the battle in the last 12 minutes of this game.
This is a junkie zone defense here from New York. Joe Babino serving the role as the rabbit, is chasing the mark. And now New York matches up man. Closing in on 1 minute to play in the second quarter. Jeff Powell flicks it deep, and it did not hang up enough. The disc lost its stability, intended for Trevor Henry. Clock still running, 30 seconds for the Empire. Mike Drost was streaking deep. Now Allen lets it fly to the end zone. He got his man. 3 straight for the Empire. And with 15 seconds left in the half, it's a one-score game again. Isaiah Bryant getting big in the end zone. Henry was a couple steps shy defensively, and just absolute elation from Bryant. New York hanging tough here. Stick around at halftime. We'll chat with the Chief Operating Officer of the Toronto Rush, Jim Lloyd. That is Mark Lloyd's uncle. And if you weren't aware, the Lloyd family also owns the Vancouver AUDL team, the Riptide. They've got a huge home game tonight against the San Jose Spiders. Adrian Yearwood. 10 seconds left. Nearly a turn, but kept alive. Masik Kelly did not get enough on this one. Harris, with 1 second left, throws it into the hands of the New York Empire. And the first half comes to an end with New York carrying some great energy. The Rush opened up a 4-score lead. The Empire finish the half 3-zip. Toronto by 1 at the break. Misread by Allen. Harris, time was running down. He didn't really have time to look. But in the end zone, it was Mike Drost who came up with a D. So Toronto 11, New York 10. After 2 quarters, the score in that second quarter was Toronto 5 and New York 4. Megan Tormey's heading down to the field. She'll chat with one of the members of the New York Empire when we come back here to Toronto.
Yeah, it's a Zipcar. I don't own it. I just use it when I need it. Zipcar has thousands of cars parked all over the city, even 2 on my block. You can use one for an hour or for a day. And Zipcar pays for gas and insurance. It's easy.
Go to Zipcar.com to get your Zipcard, the key to vehicles parked in your neighborhood and across the globe. For work or play, find a Zipcar near you, book it,
And before you know it, you're on the road.
cars by the hour or day, gas and insurance included.
Join for as little as $6 per month at Zipcar.com.
The sun beginning to set in Toronto. Still a lot of daylight left, though, as the Rush and the Empire enjoying a battle. This has been great competition. The Rush 27-0 all time. They've never lost, and they've never trailed in the first half today, but the Rush have been tested, and one of the big reasons why is New York's Justin Allen. Megan down in the field with New York's number 1.
First quarter, talk a little bit about what was going on and what you did to turn that around.
We know a lot of times we can start off games with not the right energy, so we know that we can hang with this team. I know, they've won 29 straight or something like that, but we know that we can always dig down, and we know our defense can rattle off breaks, so we never consider ourselves out of the game.
And what are you guys going to talk about at halftime?
We're just going to talk about digging that extra little bit. We're going to settle down on offense. We're going to stop making low percentage throws upwind, and we think we can even get more energy on our defensive side. So we're just going to try to run them.
Are we going to see any other defensive looks to kind of fluster or flummox the Toronto offense?
We kind of have a couple other things up our sleeves, so we'll see about that. But we pride ourselves on hard man D, so we're just going to try to beat them with that.
Okay, and tell me your experiences here in the AUDL. What are your thoughts so far?
It's awesome. It's a completely different game on such a wider field, but coming from somebody who just finished in college, I love it. It's a completely different game. You get to play against a bunch of different friends and different teams, so it's cool traveling and playing and being on ESPN.
All right, excellent. Well, Justin, you guys are doing an excellent job so far this first half. I'm excited to watch the rest of the game, the second half. Good luck, and thanks so much for talking to me.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Evan. We're going to take a quick break.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
We're at halftime here in Toronto. The Rush leading by only 1 after Toronto extended the advantage to as many as 4. 11-10 Toronto will hopefully be joined by a special guest in just a few minutes. But first, let's look back at what happened this past week with the Week 10 AUDL highlights. Run the tape, fellas. tonight, and the first place Radicals prevail 23-15. Nice job by Peter Graffi punctuating that Madison win. The Radicals knocked off Chicago last night to clinch the Midwest Division. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But now I'm Evan Lepler, joined by Chief Operating Officer and Managing Partner of the Toronto Rush, Jim Lloyd. And Jim, thanks for joining us. A pretty close game right now. Your thoughts on the first 24 minutes?
It's exactly what we expected, Evan. We knew this was going to be tight. I think the guys spent a lot of time this week preparing for this one, and not surprised at all.
What have been your impressions on this season for Toronto? Obviously, the favorites coming in this division. How do you think the Rush stack up to the teams in the Midwest and the West?
Well, you know what? We've got a very small sample size against them last year in the playoffs, and we know that they're extremely competitive, and it's a very strong division. So this is just a matter of making sure that our guys are playing hard every game, and they're not letting up, and they're preparing for what could be a very, very tough playoff drive.
You're always in such good spirits when I see you here at Varsity Stadium. Tell us about your discovery of this sport. When did it happen, and you know, what kind of guy were you before you discovered Ultimate?
I have never seen the game before about 3 years ago, and I went and saw Mark, my nephew, play a couple of times in some collegiate tournaments and a couple of club tournaments, national championships in Ottawa, where I live, and I thought it was kind of neat, and I just didn't understand it, and as I became more acquainted with it, I really started to like it, and I get a real kick out of this. I'm a wannabe expert.
Have you tried your hand in playing at all?
I haven't tried playing, but I'm working on the flick. I think the flick's coming along.
There's still time. There's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
Now, the Lloyd family doesn't just own the Rush. You also own the Vancouver Riptide, an up-and-coming team in the Western Division. Tell us about that process and your thoughts on Vancouver's season. Obviously, a big game tonight against San Jose at home.
Yeah, the Vancouver came together actually a few years ago when we looked at the Rush. We knew that Vancouver would be a good market too, so we put an option in on that franchise, and this was the year that we expanded in the West, and they've turned out to be a real surprise. They're a young team. They're very fun to watch. I saw you commentating that game on ESPN3, and once it got up here in Canada, we all watched it, and they're coming together. I think they'll be a team that's, may take a little bit of time to get to that top level, but when they get there, I think they're going to be good.
Some incredible youth on that team.
Yeah.
It's likely going to be the winner between San Jose and San Francisco that makes it to championship weekend, which is here in Toronto on July 26th and 27th. I know you've put a ton of work into making this weekend special. What can fans expect to see here in Toronto for championship weekend in the AUDL number 3?
Well, you know what we've done is we've kept everything really close to the venue in terms of hoteling for fans that want to come and spend the weekend in Toronto. You're very close to the hotel within walking distance, so travel has been taken off the counter, and we're really working hard on making sure that people are here and they want to come to all the games, not just one, not just come see their favorite team. And we're encouraging all of the fans in the U.S. to get an airplane or get in a car or get in a bus and get here, because it's going to be fun. We've redone our concourse level with a beer garden that'll hold 650 people right in the concourse level, and we're hoping for great weather. Usually we're okay, late July up here. And I think there's going to be lots of fun, lots of activity, and a real buzz. And I think getting the final 4 teams here is going to be incredible. We're really looking forward to it.
It's going to be an amazing Ultimate Showcase, and that is just 5 weeks from right now. I don't know if that makes you nervous or makes you excited, perhaps a little of both. But 5 weeks from now, the top 4 Ultimate teams in the AUDL will be here to battle for the title.
It's going to be a war. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. I was talking to fans down there, and they said they can hardly wait. We launched our ticket sale campaign about a week and a half ago, and all the local Toronto fans are jumping all over it right now. And as things crystallize and teams know who's coming, we're sure that our friends down in the U.S. and in other cities are going to be looking to come to Toronto.
I'll let you go after this. You guys have done a really nice job of bringing non-Ultimate fans into the sport. What has your reaction been to meeting people who have never seen the sport before and then see the Toronto Rush play, and what has that dynamic been like?
Well, the consistent response that we get is, this is really fun. This looks like fun. And it's usually around kids, and we've got people that have come without their kids and then brought their kids and still had fun. They were watching it on their own with their wives or husbands and then bringing the kids. So I think they've really kind of bought in on the fun atmosphere. It's competitive, but it's not over-the-top competitive. And the players are great. The players interact with the fans. They make them feel part of it.
It's great to be a part of it. Jim Lloyd, thank you so much. Good luck in the second half.
Thanks, Evan. I hope we can talk again at championship weekend.
Let's hope so. Megan will rejoin me. We'll have some first half highlights and look ahead to the second half when we come back to Varsity Stadium in Toronto after this.
I missed my graduation, distracted. I sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday.
Yeah, it's a Zipcar. I don't own it, I just use it when I need it. Zipcar has thousands of cars parked all over the city, even 2 on my block. You can use one for an hour or for a day. And Zipcar pays for gas and insurance. It's easy.
Go to Zipcar.com to get your Zipcard, the key to vehicles parked in your neighborhood and across the globe. For work or play, find a Zipcar near you, book it,
And before you know it, you're on the road.
cars by the hour or day, gas and insurance included.
Join for as little as $6 per month at Zipcar.com.
As you can see, just a little bit less than 5 minutes to go until we begin the second half. What a beautiful night it is here in Toronto in the great province of Ontario. As the wind rustles the papers behind me, I hope the roster didn't just get blown away. Megan Tormey alongside. And Megan, your thoughts on the topsy-turvy nature of that first half. Do you see New York having enough in the tank to come out of here with a win and shock Toronto? Because that would be a really big deal if Toronto lost for the first time.
I've been excited for this game all season because I really do believe that New York has what it takes to beat the Toronto Rush. And it looks like the Rush are playing just a little bit nervous. They are turning the disc. They are giving the New York Empire the opportunities that they need to score. Furthermore, Justin hinted at perhaps a couple of other defensive looks that will continue to flummox the Toronto Rush, giving them even more chances to score a goal.
It's interesting how they keep these tricks up their sleeve even in the second half of a game like this. And if you're Toronto, you're a team that's 27-0, and you've experienced some adversity, you've had some close games. How do you think they're going to regroup at halftime? Because as you mentioned, we saw some uncharacteristic turnovers and just some sloppy play from them. Also, Mark Lloyd really hasn't left his stamp on this game, and it's hard to imagine him going 4 quarters without doing something spectacular.
From the looks of it, it's just nerves affecting Toronto at this point. So I think they're going to have to come in, perhaps get a good halftime speech, calm themselves, and go out and play the games we've always seen them play. One thing, however, about Toronto that's very, very important to mention, they are the kings of the fourth quarter. I can't even tell you how many times we've seen them dominate, pull away by 3, 4, 5 points at a time in the last quarter. So if the New York Empire continues to play the way they've been playing and the Toronto Rush don't do what they normally do, which is come out hot in that fourth quarter, this might go the way of the Empire.
It's going to be fascinating. Let's take a look at some of the pictures from the first half again and see how this thing transpired. Again, this is a Toronto team that not only is undefeated, but this Rush squad has won by basically an average of 12 points per game over the past 7. Remy Ojo going up high near the end zone. The Rush wearing these alternate red jerseys that they got after they won the championship last year. New York made some plays too, and that was sort of the play that got the Empire going early in this first half. They were down 4-1, tied at 6-6 at the end of one. It was 11-7 Toronto in the second quarter before this Empire team got back into it. Great play on the sidelines. It's going to be interesting to see if Toronto does anything differently in the second half after clearly New York's gone on a 3-0 run to end the second quarter after a 5-2 run to end the first quarter. Justin Allen seems like a young, charismatic kid who's great for this league.
I know he looked even younger in person than he does up here in the press box, but clearly a lot of excitement exuding from him when he talked about what they thought went right the first half and what they were planning to do the second half.
We'll take a quick timeout. 11-10, Toronto leads. Third quarter action begins when we come back.
I missed my graduation, distracted. Asleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed my final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
Bright blue skies here in Toronto. The defending champions feeling a little bit rushed as they get ready to start this third quarter of action. Again, next week we'll be in Canada again. The Montreal Royale hosting the DC Breeze next Saturday night at Percival Molson Stadium, home of the Montreal Alouettes. This field, Varsity Stadium, for a long time was the home of the Toronto Argonauts. This stadium has hosted more Grey Cup championship games than any other venue in Canada in the CFL. This facility has also hosted some pretty important international soccer games. And in fact, the Iranian national soccer team, which was so impressive earlier today in their heartbreaking 1-0 loss to Argentina, the Iranian national soccer team played here against the Canadian national team in the late 90s. That was a really big deal. It was the first visit for an Iranian team to North America since before the Islamic Revolution, when the Olympic soccer team played in the 1976 Summer Games, which coincidentally also staged some matches in the 76 Olympics here at Varsity Stadium in Toronto. A lot of venues with cool histories in the AUDL. This facility seats about 5,000, but there's certainly a ton of space for temporary bleachers. They've had crowds of upwards of 15, 20,000 here in the past. And certainly a great home for the Toronto Rush as they try to remain undefeated, not just at home, but in the AUDL. One thing we should talk about is how the seeding is going to work for championship weekend. Obviously, 8 teams make the playoffs, and perhaps this is a good time to check out the current standings. In the West Division, which is the brand new division, only 2 teams qualify for the playoffs, and it's very likely going to be San Jose and San Francisco. To have any chance, Vancouver has to knock off the Spiders tonight in a game that starts at 8 o'clock Eastern. We'll have our eyes on it. San Jose, San Francisco, the 1, the 2. Some people think those are the 2 best teams in the league. I think Toronto certainly is competitive with both, might even be better than both, but it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of that and who comes to Toronto among that pairing. In the Midwest Division, you have Madison that wrapped up the division title last night with a win over Chicago at Breese-Stevens Field, a game that the Wildfire really went into with some confidence. Chicago beat Madison earlier this year. One of their 2 losses came at the hands of the Wildfire, but now Chicago's looking at a situation of fending off Indianapolis for that 2 spot so it can have a game against the 2 seed from the East for the right to make it here to Toronto. In the East Division, as we've discussed, the Rush comfortably in first place. The Breeze knocked off the Empire last week. Here's the thing about that rivalry. DC and New York still have 3 more meetings to come in the regular season. DC took round 1, and we'll see who takes rounds 2, 3, and 4. The 2 seed from the Midwest plays the 2 seed from the East. Whoever has the better record hosts that game. If the records are identical, it will be based on point differential. And once the quarterfinals have passed by, that's when the seeding for the championship weekend will be decided, with the number 1 seed going to the team that advances to the semis who has the best record. If Toronto remains undefeated, obviously it would be them, and so forth. You seed them 1 through 4 based on first by record and then by point differential. It's going to be an amazing experience, that July weekend, just 5 weeks away.
I know, I can't wait to see these different divisions match up for the first time, save of course for the second place Midwest and East Division game. I have to say that I think the East Division is turning out to be the more interesting division out of all of them. For a while, Midwest was certainly the race that we all had our eyes towards. But with DC coming out with that win against New York last weekend, and with them having 3 games left to play against one another, certainly makes you wonder which one's going to walk away second and third.
It's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be interesting to see if those teams still have fuel in the tank to finish the season after they meet 3 times in the last few weeks. First point of the second half, and Toronto begins on offense. Isaiah Masakeli looking for Yearwood, and he hauls it in just shy of the goal line. Matthew Lamar was right on his hip. Yearwood to the end zone, and Toronto back up by 2. It was Nima Mostagimi able to shake his defender in the end zone to become an open target for Adrian Yearwood. Yearwood also missed the first meeting of the season between these two teams because he was playing the role of Frankenstein. Yearwood, a professional actor, has his own theater company. It was opening weekend for Frankenstein, and he was the monster. The Thursday night before the team drove down to D.C., it was opening night, and many of his teammates went and watched him here in Toronto. So New York seeking a quick counter. Nice handler movement. Katz and Wininger is running a little blackjack drill down the field. Vasiliev, a feisty defender, as good a defender as there is in this league, marking a handler. Deep shot looking for the end zone. Jones intercepts. Jones was poaching away from Bode momentarily, but he recovered in plenty of time, and now a turnover. The pass right up line through the hands of Jarrett Marin. Missed some time earlier this year with an ankle injury. And these are two teams that you don't usually see have 3 consecutive throws as turnovers.
I think the Empire are a little more prone to such play than Toronto in their game against the Royale, another very tightly played, hotly contested game. They were prone to those quick turnovers. Toronto, this is pretty uncharacteristic for them.
Well, we haven't spent much time talking about the weather today because, well, it's simply perfect. There's very little wind. Might be a little too warm in the sun, but we're not complaining. Certainly more comfortable than it was in North Carolina, where I spent the last few days. Got in my car the other day in North Carolina. It said 101 degrees. Oh. Powell, full extension to keep the possession alive. Low throw. And what a D from New York. Sam Taylor lays out and knocks it down for the Empire. But you could tell the Rush were living on the precipice of disaster right there. Bode rises up, guarded by Jones. Toronto's done a nice job containing Matt Bode in this game. Plenty of time to survey, and sets up Katz. Looking for the end zone. Open man. Matthew Stevens. Goes the Barry Sanders route of handing the disc to the referee in the end zone. He's been there plenty of times.
And I was corrected by Sandy Canetti on Twitter. This is not Matt Stevens' rookie year. This is his second year with the New York Empire.
He's grown into becoming one of the top stars in the Empire State. It's a spectacular play by Powell, but then he almost turned it over on this dump to Vasiliev. Right near the turf from a knee. And then what a D this was by Taylor. You could put that on a poster. And the deep shot for Stevens. He created plenty of separation, and the throw was right where it needed to be. So back to a one-score game. New York looking for the break that would tie it up. New York has often begun points with this junky defense. Hammer over the top. Oh, that hung up there for a long time. Nobody really attacked it defensively for New York. That should have been D, shouldn't it?
There was certainly time to D it.
Underneath Watts, resets for McKnight. Deep shot looking Kelly's way. Toronto back up by 2.
This quick 2-point lead by the Toronto at face value looks troubling for New York, but we saw earlier today their ability to fight back in such an important game for them.
Well, New York certainly closed each quarter in sparkling fashion. And, you know, this is a game for Toronto to prove to themselves and to the rest of the league that's watching on ESPN3 that it is still the team to beat. And that takes us back to our Twitter question. Who is the team to beat? Who is the favorite to be the AUDL champion? You know, we're 5 weeks away. The season began 10 weeks ago with Toronto just barely emerging victorious in their 2 road games. Now, the Rush are a little lucky. They don't have to go back to New York or Toronto or to D.C. again. So they probably have the easiest schedule among any of the top teams in this division for sure. But let us know what you think on Twitter at Evan Lepler, at Meagles000. New York in the end zone again for Stevens. We'll call his name many times before this day is done. Use the hashtag AUDLChamps. I think, you know, the discussion has to be centered around Toronto, San Jose, and Madison. I think that's the conversation. And last week when we were in Madison, as you see this nice shot to Stevens, got his hand on the disc just in time with Lindquist approaching. You know, people in Madison were asking me, how do the Radicals stack up to San Jose and Toronto? And it's a really interesting, it's all speculation at this point, but why not? It's fun. I think on a really windy day, Madison, with its trademark zone defense, might be the best team in the league. But on a calm day, when it comes down more to playmakers, I'm not sure if Madison is as strong in that department as this Toronto team or the San Jose team. What do you think?
I agree, and I think that their defense does not often get the opportunity to go up against incredibly strong handlers who have a wide range of throwing capabilities, both over the cup, long throws, fast throws. So their defense, while incredibly seasoned, is not particularly fine-tuned to throwers like that.
Oh, what a play as Cameron Harris kept it alive after Ryan Drost laid out defensively. He got the deflection, but Harris was there. An injury timeout called as Drost slow to get up. Oh, Ryan Drost deserved the D here. Underneath, he got a small deflection on it, but then Harris cleans up the trash. So on the restart, Harris hits Yearwood. Some good poach defense deep there. Right now, Justin Allen's trying to catch up to Mark Lloyd. They're right near the goal line. 35 yards away in the middle of the field, Harris. Now about 12 yards out, through the hands of one Rush player. Armitage couldn't catch it, and Mark Lloyd was there. That was a garbage-filled point for Toronto, but who cares? It worked out.
And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said Mark Lloyd is so incredibly heads up. He'll run to the disc regardless of the intended target. And so many times he gets the D or he gets the score because he's there and he's committed to being there.
There's another look at that near D and the short throw intended for Armitage. Not the best point of the year for Steve Armitage. Right here, pass was a little behind him, and Justin Allen could not react quickly enough defensively. New York still very much in this, trying to become the first team in the history of the AUDL to be better than Toronto on any given day. Talk about the great winning streaks in sports history. In the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers in 1972 won 33 straight games. The New England Patriots in 2003 and 2004 won 21 straight regular season games. Major League record set in the early 1900s, around 26 games in a row. Toronto Rush, while this league is in its infancy, trying to put a mark together that could stand for a while, especially as things get more and more competitive. The hammer will fall short, and a nice read by Jonathan Martin for Toronto.
The wind conditions are slight, but that is the direction to the right of the field. That is the direction the wind is coming in, which is why we saw that hammer die the way we did.
Well, Vasiliev wants the deep shot. Powell's got great speed, and he runs this one down easily. Patiently waits for everybody to join him downfield. Back to Vasiliev, and back to Jeff Bomber Powell. Is anybody going to guard Jeff Powell? Doesn't look like it. Jones finds Powell again. Finally, Katz gets something resembling a mark on Powell. Short of the end zone for Jones. And he throws it away. Well, Katz defended Powell at the right time. And now New York looking for the counter. This looks like a punt, unless Matt Stevens can get there. And this has been a long point of back and forth. Toronto's going to take a timeout here. You know, before the season even began, I was talking with San Jose's Bo Kittredge, and he said the biggest difference between this field is that, you know, on the USAU field, 70 by 40, I never get tired. On this field, on some of the longer points, when you're going wide and long, you can get fatigued, and it seems like both teams here are a little wiped out. It's 14-12 Toronto, 5:06 to go in the third. The Rush have the disc. When we come back, you are watching the AUDL on ESPN3.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
Well, it's the longest day of the year, so we'll still have some sunshine as we progress toward 8 o'clock. 14-12, the Rush, with some new players on the field. Yearwood and Lloyd joining Thompson McKnight as the three handlers. And Yearwood couldn't find Lloyd, who was being chased by Joe Ouellette. Yearwood looks to throw and go. Defended well by Ben Ivers. Lloyd sends the deep shot for Lindquist, and Jeff Lindquist over the top. He made that tough catch look super routine, didn't he? Lloyd to Masick Kelly. Inbounds. That was a fun sequence. Not the best deep shot Lloyd's ever thrown, but Lindquist bailed him out.
I was sure Ben Ivers had that D, but then Lindquist reached out with his long arms. Pulled it in from the side of him.
Ivers may have jumped a little too early, and also Lindquist had the position. Timed his jump well. I think it just looked like Ivers just went into a different atmosphere. And this one nearly out the back of the end zone. But he certainly kept that last foot in. First point of contact, you only need 1 foot. You know what we also should do while we have a moment? We should wish our buddy Chuck a happy birthday. He celebrated, what was it, his 54th birthday yesterday?
Happy birthday, Chuck. You're still looking young.
He is far from 54. Taylor, and an official timeout for the injury as Taylor sort of incidentally collided with his defender. Lots of concerned looks from the Rush players, including Mark Lloyd, who's the leader of this team. Evan Phillips, the head coach in the red, off to the left. Shooter Hasty as well. So Taylor makes his play. Let's see the landing. Right shoulder, perhaps. Jarrett Marin, who's had his ups and downs health-wise this year, holding his right shoulder. He is walking off the field under his own power. Vasiliev picks up the mark defensively. New York trailing by 3. Here's Bode. Lets it fly. Powell running down defensively and makes the play for the Rush. Powell just turned on the Jets, made up the difference in separation, and then made the play.
In probably the last split second that he had, Taylor Brooks did a great job timing that win up before Powell. Still no match for Powell's defensive power.
Ojo underneath, beats Katz. Toronto sacrifices about 10 yards to get that dump and then swings it across. Here's Gord Harrison. Gord Harrison, his first year in the AUDL was spent with the Buffalo Hunters in 2012, a team that eventually became the Rochester Dragons. Matt Stevens swats that out of bounds. And another Rush player shaking up, Vasiliev, who came in to the game for the shaking up Marin. Now he steps off the sideline. Hopefully it's just a cramp. Or he's hobbling and he'll take a seat on the bench. Lloyd on the mark of Seth Kennedy. Wininger over to Katz. New York using the entire field here. And ahead it's Allen. Allen thought about the deep shot, but Powell was sort of baiting it. Allen wisely thought better of the deep shot on that chance. Swings it across field for Brooks. The New York Empire to the end zone. Wininger finds Stevens again.
Wininger is another very interesting player on the New York Empire. Suffered a debilitating hamstring injury a number of years ago, and so went from being a top cutter to one of the top handlers. Obviously, at that point in your career, you have to do a lot of work to learn the role of another position, and Wininger has done that incredibly well.
One of the workhorses for the Pony team, top club team in New York, consistently a Nationals competitor. And he certainly has molded his game to be one of the top throwers. And, you know, we talked to Tom Gibbons before the game without Noah Saul. He said Katz and Wininger, those are going to be the two guys whom the disc will run through. Another big flick pull. That's an unbelievable pull. About a 90-yard flick with plenty of hang time, allowing the defense a chance to get down. Toronto slicing through the junky defense from New York. McKnight back over to Harris. Underneath it's Lloyd. And Lloyd lets one fly. in pursuit for Toronto. Steve Armitage. Incomplete. Oh, and now a whistle. A late whistle. And the New York defender, Ben Ivers, can't believe it. Beg your pardon, that's Mike Drost. We get the benefit of the second look. That did not look like a foul to me.
That looked like a clean D from Mike Drost.
Contact on the center goal line, basically resetting the stall count. Armitage pivots, and Toronto scores. Tough break for the umpire there on what probably would have been one of the top highlights of the week, if not for the whistle.
Maybe we can get a second look, Evan. Maybe there's something we're not seeing, but from the 2 times I've seen it so far, that looked like a clean D.
Here we go. Lloyd, again, a majestic throw, but Drost there defensively. And there may have been a little contact on that right shoulder from the backside, but certainly didn't look like Steve Armitage was going to glare at the referee expecting a call.
Yeah.
So the Rush back up by 3 with just over a minute to go here in the third. These end of quarter situations would make this professional ultimate so much different. They're really fascinating situations. That's a beautiful floaty backhand. All Seth Kennedy had to do was keep running. And New York forces that one to the near pylon. In the end zone, it's Taylor Brooks. 35 seconds left in the third quarter. Well, Megan, we wanted a close game, and we've gotten a close game. At the very outset, it looked like Toronto might be too good. They led 4-1. They led 11-7. But New York, even without its top thrower, at least statistically, has hung tough. Now, the big question is, Toronto, well, they haven't had a ton of close games. They're just used to winning. They're so confident in themselves. This New York team, even though they had a nice long 7-game winning streak, still looking to learn how to beat the best teams in the league. Clock winding down on the Rush here in this third quarter. Lindquist, Yearwood, McKnight, the handlers, Masick, Kelly, Armitage, Lloyd, and Harris, the cutters. Lloyd is just chilling deep. Justin Allen playing deep, deep. 10 seconds in the quarter. Lindquist shakes his mark, finds Harris wide open. Harris puts it to space looking for Lloyd. Did he put too much on it? No. Mark Lloyd runs it down with ease as the clock expires. And that's how the third quarter will close. Was he in bounds? Was he in the end zone? And apparently he was not. No goal. Love to see a look at this again, unless they're going to say that the throw didn't get off, but I thought it did. Where was his first point of contact? Can we see that one more time, guys? Perhaps slow it down a little bit, because what do you think, Megan? It's the 15-yard line. The first point of contact. When does he establish possession? The fans here want it to count. Mark Lloyd is pointing to the video board, but it will not count. It's a 2-score Toronto lead as we take the turn for home here in Ontario. The Rush, 16. The Empire, 14. Fourth quarter coming up next.
I missed my graduation, distracted. I sleep so we could drill. I missed anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Saturday. I missed the final exam. I missed the point play. I even missed my parents' anniversary. I missed a lot.
The Toronto fans known collectively as the Rustache. Haven't seen many red Rustashes today, not as many as we saw last time we were here. Better believe they'll have all the Rustashes out for championship weekend, which is 35 days from now. 5 weeks from today, the 2 semifinals at 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And then Sunday, the AUDL championship game. Wonder if Toronto can repeat, or will we see one of the new teams from the West, or could Madison finally get over the hump? Of course, we will be here and on ESPN3, and the cool news that we have recently discovered is that not only will the games be shown on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app, but also here in Canada where ESPN3 is unavailable, the TSN Go app, which is basically the Watch ESPN equivalent here in Canada, that will simulcast the AUDL championship game. So excited to announce that news, and certainly very eager to see what will happen here on championship weekend, July 26th and 27th. Also eager to see what's going to happen here in the fourth quarter. Megan, what do you see as the key for New York? How do they finally hand Toronto a loss? How do they do it?
They have to.
There's a great D by Mike Jones. Refraining from crossfield hammers that float. Probably a good start.
Well, that was the very first thing I was going to say.
Sure.
They have done a great job so far at preventing the rush from flowing easily. They have to keep their defensive look tight in order to ensure that. But then offensively, we need to see throws that are unlike the upside-down throw they just threw.
So New York catches a break. After turning it over, the Empire have possession again. And wow. Wininger with a terrible miscommunication with Billy Katz. So Toronto basically knocking on the door. Here's Harrison. I don't really understand the receiver travel call when there wasn't a receiver on the play. There's the score for Toronto, Jonathan Martin. I understand that the theory of the receiver travel, but there was no reception there. He just picked up the disc.
I believe he picked it up in the wrong spot, which is why the ref called the travel.
Basically the equivalent of a violation, I guess, in USAU terms. Harrison does a nice job of keeping that pivot foot cleanly planted, hitting Martin. New York receiving the disc down 2, can't score, couple turnovers. Toronto back up 3. Rush ended up winning that third quarter 5-4. The Rush also won the second quarter 5-4 after the first quarter ended in a 6-6 draw. From the back of the end zone, 25-yard throw, which just escaped the end zone, and now a deep shot. Chasing it down. Stevens able to get there. Back for Brooks, and he turns it over. A well-timed poach from Mostagimi. Another big shot. Allen versus Lloyd, the matchup of the day. And Allen got his hand in there. You don't see too many young kids who basically are still in college go up toe-to-toe with Mark Lloyd.
And Mark Lloyd, one of the best receivers in the AUDL. If you can read the disc right alongside him, you're doing okay.
A stall count and back to Toronto. Justin Allen, 6 credit hours away from his degree at Appalachian State. He expects to graduate in December with a degree in healthcare management. Aside from his pro ultimate career, but Lloyd makes amends, zips the flick to the end zone, and Toronto matches its largest lead of the game. 18-14 rush.
This is what we're so accustomed to seeing the Toronto Rush do at the end of a game. Keep their heads in it, keep fighting with the same intensity that they started the game with, and pull away.
Harris from Lloyd, such a familiar combination. You spent a lot of time at the outset, Megan, talking about the agility of these great players, and on that throw from Lloyd, I think we saw just how much, separation he had in his stance. The rush dash has come alive here in Toronto. Wininger back to Katz. Finally a cut downfield, and Taylor makes the catch, stumbles. Allen resets for Wininger, wants the deep shot for Katz. Massac Kelly trailing, and it's incomplete. Off air, Jim Lloyd said that they were going to get the cowbell ready in the second half. It's a nice layout in the end zone to keep it alive by Harrison. Martin back for Harrison, swings it to Jones. Underneath for Powell. Quick reset. The fans wanted a big huck there, and Toronto just calmly working it downfield. Powell, the underneath to Lindquist. Hammer over the top. This would get the fans going in the end zone. Jonathan Martin hauls in the hammer, and the Rush lead by 5.
That was a beautiful hammer. I'm sure it stated the fans' desire for something exciting.
Big play by Harrison in the end zone, and then Lindquist said, enough with this patience. What's the fun in that? Especially when the field is that wide and you have Martin that wide open.
We talk about so many differences in the AUDL, Evan. I really think that playing with this much crowd noise has to be something that takes a big adjustment too. Imagine knowing all of the noise is either for or against you, and on top of that, you probably have a very difficult time hearing your coach, hearing your sideline.
And there's so much less time to get instruction from the sideline too. Minimal time between points to keep the action floating. The Rush have scored the first 3 here in the fourth quarter. New York trying to get on the board here in the final quarter of action. Taylor's throw gets past one layout into the hands of another. And Taylor Brooks, the recipient of the New York score.
We've seen seen quite a few of those tight cross-field throws. They haven't always worked out so well for the New York Empire. And that one was a near D.
Sam Taylor living dangerously. So that snaps the 3-0 Toronto run. And I think the Rush probably should have had one more score at the end of the third quarter as well. Less than 7 minutes for the Empire to battle back. Plenty of hang time on the pull, but New York perhaps not getting downfield defensively with as much enthusiasm as they were earlier. Yearwood escapes his defender and switches fields entirely. Powell to a wide open Lindquist. Massac Kelly was streaking deep. He wanted it, but there wasn't a clear throwing lane, in part because of the poach that frees up on the far side of the field. Lindquist wants Mostagimi. He's got him just shy of the end zone, though. Powell could not receive it because New York comes up with a hand block. Huck and Hope off the turnover, and nothing doing for the Empire. That's the throw of a defeated team, isn't it?
That definitely was not as well thought out as we have seen New York Empire conduct themselves earlier.
Lindquist lets one fly, and that has a little bit too much. So New York calls a timeout quickly, trying to save as much time as they can. The scoreboard clock says 5:38. That's what separates Toronto from its 28th consecutive victory. The Rush are still undefeated and leading by 4 with just over 5.5 to play here on a gorgeous Saturday night in Toronto.
He's coming down the ice. He's coming around the net. Centering pass. Oh, look at this. A break for Canada. He shoots. He scores. Canada wins in overtime. Canada back on top of the world.
19-15 Toronto. 5:38 on the clock as New York comes out of this timeout in pretty much a must-score situation. Down by 5 with around 5 minutes to go. That's not a really realistic option. Great to have you with us, though, here from Varsity Stadium on the campus of the University of Toronto. I got to explore this campus a little bit yesterday. It is gorgeous. It's like they recently had their commencement ceremonies. They were packing up some of the external stages. But a great atmosphere. Just a beautiful town. We're not far from the CN Tower. You walked all the way to the CN Tower yesterday.
Absolutely. My mom joined me for this trip, and we walked a total of 10 miles around the city of Toronto, and it is beautiful everywhere as it is here at Varsity Stadium.
What's even more impressive is that Megan and her mother were freestyling with a disc the entirety of the 10 miles.
Little known fact about Cindy Tormey.
It was a sight to see. I wish I had seen it. Here's Lloyd looking deep. He wants Henry. Unable to come down with it in the back of the end zone.
If nothing else, New York has given Toronto a run for their money on these deep shots.
It's a good point. You know, one of the storylines we talked about was Toronto's size advantage, which was considerable just from a top to bottom roster standpoint. On average, about 2 inches taller and 10 pounds heavier. That's a tremendous catch from Allen. Luke Johnson's been crunching the numbers all week long, and You know, certainly New York hasn't been overwhelmed physically in this game. We can say that for sure. Ojo, a fraction of an inch shy of another spectacular D. To the end zone and right on the spot. Katz to Stevens. And Matt Stevens has been a scoring machine. Look at this near D from Ojo. He has this unbelievable ability to lay out and rise up before gravity takes over.
That's well put, and that's incredibly important to note when you are a defender. Oftentimes, we see players lay out to try and D the disc, and then they don't stand a chance of putting on a quick mark. But Ojo, you blink and he's back up, putting on a strong mark.
In elite ultimate circles, that dynamic is discussed a lot. You know, sometimes if you lay out too much, you leave your team vulnerable because you're not setting the quick mark, and the force is such an important part of team defense, particularly on the smaller field.
But if you're Ojo, you can do both.
Usually when I lay out like that, I need to stay down for a few minutes because it hurts. Masik Kelly wants Lindquist to the end zone. What a beautiful throw. That could be the cherry on top of the ice cream cone for the Rush, who lead 20-16.
Yeah, they are proving to be just a little more conditioned, both with their legs and with their throws. About this time of game, of course, you're tired. Both of these teams are playing with only 20 people on their roster. But that usually elicits a few more throwing errors because your arms are tired, your core is tired. And yet we see Toronto holding just a little bit tighter, still able to execute these tricky inside-out throws, these more precise long throws, just a little better than the New York Empire.
New York needs to score quickly. What a tremendous D underneath. Again, Toronto getting performances from so many different key players, and Andrew Watts lays out for that one. There's an injury. Matt Bode, again, slow to get up after Vasiliev shook him defensively. And Bode will come off the field, replaced by Mike Drost. Jones breaks his mark, did not put enough float on that throw, looking to the end zone. Now, we've seen goals scored in 20, 30 seconds for long stretches, so New York still has some life, but it needs to happen quickly. Mike Drost underneath. The Drost brothers grew up in Connecticut on the Yankees side of the state, but ever since they were old enough to decide what baseball team they wanted to root for, as Mike Drost hauls it in, you know what team they rooted for? Well, they're twins, so they decided to root for the Minnesota Twins.
That is adorable.
Spiders and Riptide underway in Vancouver. San Jose with an early 1-0 lead. Went to Minnesota a couple summers ago and saw a bunch of Twins games. Mike Drost, 90 minutes older than Ryan. They're from New Milford, Connecticut. Mike went to Georgetown. Ryan went to Amherst College. It's funny, Ryan played for the same coach at Amherst as Tom Gibbons played for, about 15 years apart. Bill Stewart, who may be watching, has certainly mentored many young Ultimate players, and it's fun to see the longtime coaches with their fingerprints all over the AUDL, whether they realize it or not.
That's a good point, and now that the
AUDL...
AUDL...
Yearwood endures the contact and hauls it in and calls for an injury. He got crunched by New York's Sean Childers. Childers just coming off an injury. It certainly wasn't intentional. Like an elbow in the side of the head. Yearwood will remain in the game. Hammer looking for Yearwood. He dumps it back to Lloyd, resets for Harris. Lloyd with a little throw and go, and all the attention was being paid to Lloyd. Meanwhile, Cameron Harris runs free. Rush back up 4 with less than 2 minutes left.
While New York has typically had good end zone D against Toronto, occasionally it does just what it did this point, which is neglect one individual who takes that opportunity to get the easy score.
The Rush less than 2 minutes away from improving to 28-0. This game not by the customary double-digit margin of victory that we've been used to, but in some way that makes it more impressive, doesn't it? Tested by a worthy opponent, and in the end, Toronto's going to prove to be the best on this day once again.
You're right, Evan. The score as it stands right now certainly doesn't do New York justice.
Bode back in the game. Good to see. Auerbach hits Katz in the middle. Looking back to Auerbach with a hammer, and he's in. So that score took about 15 seconds. If only there was some way you could do the onside pull, the onside kick to create possession for yourself. Not sure how that would work in the sport of Ultimate, but if there was some way New York could do something risky, set up like a frisbee golf hole at midfield, and if you can throw it in the basket, you get the disc back. Otherwise, they get it on your goal line. What do you think? We didn't talk about that in our ADL rules conversation, but perhaps some sort of onside pull down the road. You see the wind chill and the wildfire tied early. Second night of a back-to-back for Chicago after losing a tough one in Madison last night, and the Spiders open with 3 straight scores against the Vancouver team. Darren Wu back in the lineup, but reports have told us that Derek Fenton, who's among the top assist leaders in the entire league, not expected to play in that game, so that's obviously a huge blow for the Vancouver Riptide. Toronto trying to bleed the last 75 seconds of this clock. Trying to do a little more than that. Deep shot to the end zone for the Rush again, and who else? Steve Armitage running free for the Toronto score, but no, a pick was called. This is coming back. Hang on. No score. A pick was called downfield, and the throw's going back.
Armitage looks as fresh right now as he did at the beginning of the game. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to run deep for that throw again.
We might just see it. Oh, Massac Kelly hits Armitage underneath. Traveling violation. Just under a minute to go. New York down 3. Van Ivers streaking deep. Oh, and it looks like a double team hand block. Toronto wins the disc right back. And now Lloyd thought about picking his spot deep for McKnight. Harris to Lindquist with 30 seconds left. Armitage drops it. At this point in the AUDL, there's no such thing as a three-point play. Sad news for the Empire, who tested the Rush today. But like that throw, the Empire not good enough. Final seconds tick away, and this one is history. A spirited battle between the defending champs and one of the top up-and-coming teams in this East Division. But it ends with Toronto standing tall again. The Rush are 28-0. Toronto improves to 10-0 in 2014. The final 4 regular season games are all against Philadelphia, Rochester, and Montreal, the 3 bottom teams in the East Division, all currently under 500. This New York team has now lost 2 in a row after it went 2 months without losing. And New York slips to 7-3. New York has 3 more games against the DC Breeze. But first, New York has to go to Rochester tomorrow. It's going to be fascinating to see how this race for the 2 spot unfolds over the next few weeks between the Empire and the Breeze. A great appreciation here at Varsity Stadium. The players giving their sincere thanks to these devoted Rush Dash fans. It was 6-6 after 1. The second, third, and fourth quarters all had the same score. The Rush 5, the Empire 4. Tied after 12 minutes, the Rush won each ensuing 12-minute segment by 1 score each. And that accounts for the 3-score win for the Rush. Megan Tormey is down on the field, and she is joined by the general manager and the top defender for this for this Toronto team, number 89, Mark Lloyd.
Thanks so much, Evan. I am joined by Mark Lloyd. Congratulations on yet another win. What happened for you guys in the fourth quarter when you really pulled ahead?
I think, the first 3 quarters we had felt good of how we were running. We just kind of had some mental mistakes, and we're kind of getting uncharacteristic turns. So in the fourth quarter, I think we just kind of tightened up a bit. Our minds showed up in that fourth, and just played some good ultimate. We had a really good defense too. Our guys were playing really hard. I think we worked really hard on their handlers, and in the fourth quarter we saw that their handlers were making a little bit more mistakes than they were earlier in the game. So it was something we'd hoped would happen, and it did, thankfully.
Okay, and what did you guys talk about at halftime?
It was the same thing. We were up 1, which is good, but I wasn't happy with how we were up the 1. I think we could have been up more at half, and just talked about some adjustments. One of those being mental errors, limit those, and then just give them less open side throws. We were letting them get open side. They were doing a really good job of just grinding it under open side for majority of the points, and so we tried to tighten that up and and get a little more pressure. And I think we did that in the second half.
And what's the takeaway from this game? What are you going to work on to carry into the championship weekend?
I think what I liked about this game compared to the last time we played them is we worked really hard from the start. And I think we now know, we know that both teams are going to change still before the playoffs if we happen to meet there. And it's just knowing that that's a really good team that we just played, and that they're going to be hungrier and better next time we play them. So just keep on proving and don't rest on another win.
All right. Well, congratulations for yet another exciting game. Enjoyed watching you guys. Go be with the rest of your team, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. All right, Evan, back to you.
Megan, Mark, thanks so much. Mark Lloyd, going into the season, said that this team could have started 0-2, and he still would have had a ton of optimism. And you think back to how close they were to starting 0-2, a 1-point win at D.C. and a 2-point win at New York. In both those games, Toronto was forced to come from behind and encounter adversity. But this is a buzzsaw of a Toronto squad right now. They win at 21-18 today. The Rush never trailed in this game. Give New York a ton of credit. Down 4-1, down 11-7. The Empire kept battling back, but in the end, it's Mark Lloyd's Toronto Rush that improves to 10-0 this year and 28-0 in the team's 2-year history in the American Ultimate Disc League. Want to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank those of you who took the time to send us something on Twitter. We appreciate the feedback. Final score, Toronto 21 and New York 18. Next week, as you can see, we head to Percival Molson Stadium in Quebec. The Montreal Royale hosting the DC Breeze, a game with very important implications in the East Division. That's 7 o'clock next Saturday night, but until then, we say so long from Varsity Stadium in Toronto. A great day for Ultimate, and in the AUDL, the Toronto Rush are still the champs, and they are still undefeated. 21-18 is the final, and on behalf of our entire Fulcrum Media Group team, for my broadcast partner, Megan Tormey, I'm Evan Lepler. Good night from Toronto. We'll talk to you next week in Montreal.